Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. We are on season 32, covering the album Celebration. We'll get into the tracks in just a minute, most of which I just covered on our last season. However, these are, again, new versions. There is one change in the band, but anytime there's a change in the band, even if it's one person, doesn't matter what position they're in, things significantly change because they're bringing their own personality and style to the band. So the band that's been consistent from the last album, on vocals, of course, Bernie Shaw. Guitars, we have Mick Box. Keys, we have Phil Lanzon. Bass, we have Trevor Boulder. But now Lee's no longer part of the band on this album, and we have Russell Gilbrook, the current drummer of the band. Really cool guy. I had a great time when I interviewed him. It was right before the show started, I think. Somewhere around there. It was like right after I interviewed Mick. And really super cool guy. Very energetic. Incredibly talented drummer. Love the sound he gets in the studio. So he is now playing with the band at the time that they make this album, Celebration. And again, they're going back into the studio to re-record their older songs. And most of these songs we just covered on the last re-recording, Totally Driven. So it's a really bizarre play for this album to even exist. But you know what? They did it. And so we're going to cover it because that was the promise that I made when I started the show. Actually, before I started the show, when I had that first podcast feed where I announced the show, that was the plan from the beginning, was I wanted to cover every single thing that they recorded in the studio. And so this would be no different. As far as I know, this is the end of it. This is all of it here. If anyone, as I've asked before, if anyone is aware of anything else they've recorded in the studio that I have not covered, even if it's just a bonus track somewhere, please let me know. I will be happy to cover it. Does this mean it's the end of the show? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's probably going to be a couple things that'll crop up here and there, but as far as even having a consistent season, I doubt it. If I do any more interviews, I'll probably just add those to the interview season, but I'll certainly, make the show, known on the socials and all that a new show has come out. There's been talks about a couple of side episodes that relate to some production aspects of the band. Whether those will happen or not, I don't know. Those have been in the works for some time, so we'll just see. Again, if any other episodes are added, I will certainly do shout outs on all the socials. So what I would suggest, stay subscribed on your podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, because you should get some kind of notification that there's a new episode. They're really weird about it though. Like I've noticed Stitcher just puts a little dot on the episode or on that podcast on your list. So, there's a new episode, but there's no real announcement. Apple Podcast seems to have just some kind of random announcement that there's a new episode, but it could be days after the episode has shown up in the feed. It's really weird. Podbean, they have nothing. There's just, I think there's just like a dot or something that tells you that, there's some action on your main page. So I don't know. And those are the only ones that I have on my phone. So I don't know about any of the other ones, but it's really kind of weird. All the shows will still be available on the website. I may be moving off of Podbean at some point, but should that be the case, all the links will be updated. All the shows will be available either way. And it's pretty crazy to think that, we've come this far. It hasn't been quite 3 years, but it's been a pretty close. There's a lot of episodes in that time. We've covered so much ground. We've had guests on. We've had interviews with the band. We've had interviews with management. We've had all kinds of stuff. And it's been a real joy to do this show. And I appreciate all you guys that have listened, that have shared, that have been a part of getting the word out there. because, it doesn't do any good for me to sit here and do this 4 shows a week for 2.5 plus years if no one's listening. And you guys have been a big part of that, spreading the word, putting, tagging me in the groups, all that stuff. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who's just listened, who's left reviews, all that stuff, because it's all mattered. It's all moved things forward. So thank you all very, very much. And especially, of course, to those who have donated to the show. That has helped significantly. And I very much appreciate that. And lastly, of course, thank you to the band for endorsing the show, for giving me the shot to do it. There's 4 bands I wanted to do. And as much as I'd love to do the other ones, I have not been able to get any kind of endorsement or approval. I have reached out multiple times on all 3 of them and have just been shut down left and right. So I don't know what will happen in the future. I would still love to do shows where I could do deep dives on to those bands and all the stuff, the great work that they've done. But all of those albums, if I'm not able to do the show or if the show happens afterwards, I'll be covering on the Haskincast podcast because I do reviews there. I just don't get to really dive into every song there because I don't have the endorsement of the band to do so. And it's a shame because I really have enjoyed digging into the nuances of these songs. It's been a lot of fun. But anyway, we're here to celebrate Celebrations, the remake album from the second to the current lineup. The only difference between this lineup and the current lineup of the band is, of course, Dave Rimmer is on bass. Another really nice guy. He was super helpful when Chaos and Color came out, especially just, we traded some notes back and forth and really helpful with some information on there. Such a nice guy, incredibly talented bass player and so quiet, he's just such a quiet guy, but a monster on stage. And I love that. I love his playing too. And his bass sound is fantastic. So this album, let's talk about the cover a little bit. I like this cover. This cover is really reminiscent of like a lot of their covers. They kind of went a little bit away from their, sort of mystical and visual paintings when they did albums like Sonic Origami and a couple others. This album cover really kind of goes back to that fantasy world. You've got, I'm going to guess that's a lady. I'm not sure. It's a person in a cloak with long hair. It's kind of reddish. Looks like they might have a sword on their belt. And they are on a cliff overlooking water, the ocean spraying up a wave and some mist. The sun is either setting or coming up. I'm not sure which, but there's a nice, yellowish orange glow among the clouds in the sky. The classic Uriah Heep logo. And then underneath in all lowercase letters. I've never understood when they make the decision to make, uppercase or lowercase for the album title. It seems really weird. It seems like the title of the album should be capitalized. And maybe that's just the, all the English classes that I took in school or being a writer that leads me to that. But it's kind of always weird to me when the album title is not capitalized. Behind the Uriah Heep logo, we have kind of a, just like an orb or a planet or whatever you want to call it. And it looks similar to a design that's also dug into the cliff a little bit. I don't know exactly what era or what part of culture they come from, but it's like it almost looks like a maze, except with rounded parts and like jagged edges and stuff. It's I see it on a lot of, I want to say Celtic artwork, maybe medieval artwork sometimes. I don't see that much artwork, so that's why I'm not too sure of exactly what the period is. But in any case, it's just got some woven design into it. It almost looks geometric, but I don't think it is with the curves in there. Then we have, like on the cliff, we've got a couple of rocks that are standing up, and it looks like they were specifically placed there. The one on the right is a little too far to see detail. The one on the left looks like it has a cut-in of a person trying to climb it, a very small person. I don't know if that would be the artwork on the rock, like somebody painted the rock or whatever. And that appears to be set on another one of those round shapes. And then at the bottom, it says 40 Years of Rock in a completely different font from everything else. So you have 3 different fonts to say the band's name, the album name, and that little catchphrase. But it looks cool. It's nice. The sun is out in the distance. It's kind of, white. But with the glow, like I said, it's hard to tell if it's sunrise or sundown. But either way, I think it's a very lovely cover. Really kind of that mystical fantasy. I could spend a few hours here hanging out on this cliff, just, watching the water, because I love to go to the ocean and just hang out on the beach and enjoy the waves coming in and out. One of my favorite things to do every year. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do it this year, but that's how it goes sometimes. So that's the album cover. We know who the band is. Let's talk a little bit about the disc itself, because I downloaded it on Amazon, by the way. It is not available on iTunes at the moment when I'm recording this, but it is available on Amazon. Was not expecting this to be. So what happened was I found 2 bonus tracks on this album that were not put on the deluxe editions of the CDs. So I believe the album was on iTunes, and I believe I downloaded the singles there, because when I went to Amazon, there was no note that I had previously purchased any part of that album. So I'm pretty sure that that's where they came from. And now it's gone. It's not there anymore. And that's okay. It looks like the bonus track that comes on this version is track number 15. It is a live version of Ghost of the Ocean. So since it is a live song, I won't be covering that on this season. But the 2 tracks that I did cover were back in the additional bonus track season, which was season 25. And that was all the ones that I couldn't find had fit into a specific album. They were just bonus tracks. And those tracks would be Only Human and Corridors of Madness. So I covered those in that season. There were some tracks from Still Evie, Still Proud. And of course, the entire 10 Miles High situation, whatever you want to call that, with the album that was released, but it wasn't released at the same time, but it's still out there in one form or another. Quality is always questionable, but it's available to be heard. And I covered all of those songs as well. So we'll just be covering basically the 12 remaining tracks and the ones that I haven't covered before. However, as I said, most of these songs we just covered in the Totally Driven season. There's only a couple that they did on here that weren't done there. So these will be, like the 5th time I'm covering some of these songs if they were on the live versions and I had a guest and that sort of thing. But you know what? We're going to do it because they're different recordings of the songs. So we'll see what we hear. Could be production things, or could be different parts. It could be rewritten. It could be something in the difference of a harmony. Who knows? We'll find out. We're going to go through each song one at a time, one more time, and then we'll just see what happens after that. So our first song up goes back to the Salisbury album. It is Bird of Prey. Holy crap. Now this is what I'm talking about. This is the classic feeling of the song, a lot faster, but a lot heavier. It's got a more current sound to it, but man, they're coming out of the gate on fire on this one. Loving the return to the style of the original vocals. I think that's excellent. The speed has thrown me off a little bit because I just feel like we're already rushing through the song. But I noticed that in the last version, they were doing, there was some rhythmic picking going on during this. It was like the rhythm was playing during the opening, and they're going more back to the traditional version of the song so far for this one. But it sounds really good. I love hearing just that little bit of cymbal ring when Russell, because the way that it works for something like this is you typically would hit the bass drum and the cymbal at the same time, but you do what's called choking the cymbal, where you grab it to deaden the sound so it doesn't just ring out. Otherwise, the cymbal can go on for quite some time, especially if it's isolated like that, because everybody else has stopped. So now you just have open air and just a little bit of that cymbal ringing out. But since he grabs it, it deadens it, but you still hear just a little bit of the tail of that. And I really like that. It just kind of makes this alive and breathing. So looking at the waveform of the song, I actually loaded the song into my workstation to see what the waveform looked like. And it's not quite Brickwall limited, but it is pushing a lot of boundaries towards the edge of where it would start distorting. And I like the sound of this. I like the playful feel of it compared to the other one. With the toms being hit the way they are and they're being so vibrant in the mix, really gives more of an almost tribal feel to this.
I can see that look that says me, wow. Try to move in closer if you dare. So I'ma sit and play the waiting game. And for a while I know she'll do the same. So fly away.
Wow, Bernie sounds absolutely fantastic in full force. Great range, great power in his voice, not losing anything as he's hitting the higher notes. Just 100% going for it. Russell is already a monster on drums on this. But his kit, as I've always said, he gets a really good sound in the studio. The sound of the band really changed when he joined because the recordings with Lee were really up and down over the years. Sometimes he had a really good, powerful drum sound. Sometimes it was just so buried and mushy in the mix that the drums were almost inaudible at times. And when Russell came in, it was boom, the band had a heavier sound. The drums were very present. The songs were driving a little bit more because of that. And we're seeing that right here. I mean, even in the last version that we reviewed on Totally Driven, Lee's drum kit sounded good on that album. It really did. But this is a hard rock band drum sound. It's a little more modern, of course, but this is definitely a great mix, really powerful version. And you can tell, I mean, aside from what he's playing, just the power of the drums brings a different dimension to this song. Okay, so the one complaint I would have is I don't think we have enough kick drum in that part. I think that would drive it a little bit more if there was just a little bit of a punchy kick in the mix, but it's a little bit buried. Mixed guitar is pretty buried too. There's a little more organ to guitar mix here, and the higher notes came through a little bit better. But overall, it's pretty close to a perfect mix, but there's just a little bit of imbalance in my personal opinion. But I'm really loving the return of the classic style of vocals here. That and the powerful drums are really amazing. I love what Phil's playing too on keys. Can't really hear Trevor that well, but Phil's tearing it up too. So there, you really heard the kick drum. It was very punchy. Came through very nicely, but in that last section, it just got buried. And that happens with, when there's a lot of layers, frequencies collide, frequencies are more powerful than other frequencies. All kinds of things happen. I mean, I could go into the depth of it, but it wouldn't matter. But the way that it was mixed, they got buried a little bit. And that's a shame because I think that part would have been a little more powerful like the rest of the song is. It kind of dipped down a little bit for me. The speed made up for it, but it was missing that punchy drive.
Watches like an eagle from its eyrie, and like a bird of prey she captured me. But I am more animal than you. Bird of prey straight into me she flew.
You know what I realized in both remakes of these songs is that they didn't do the version that went "Oh No" instead of "Fly Away," which I like because that was kind of it was fine, but the "Fly Away" was the first version I heard, and so the "Oh No" part just kind of always seemed a little off to me. So yeah, I like that they went with this version instead. I like those accents that we're hearing on the cymbal. That would be a China cymbal for those of you guys who aren't familiar with that. It's the one that it's how do I explain it? The outside edges are there and then it just kind of caves in the middle, and it looks like it was put on the stand upside down when you look at the middle of it, but the rest of it looks normal. So it's kind of weird. It has like a sizzly, swishy sound to it. That would be how John Mariano would describe it anyway. And yeah, that's it's got that distinct sound, and it doesn't have the same decay as a cymbal. It's a much shorter decay typically, but I like that. And then there was a killer fill at the end of that last section that I just played. Still can't really hear Trevor that well, but everyone else, I mean, everyone's playing with power. I know Trevor's playing well enough to know he's playing fantastic on this song. It just isn't really standing out. It's a little bit buried in the mix for me on this one. Hoping the rest of the songs won't be that way, because I do enjoy listening to him. Now, I've been saying, if you're going to take the time to re-release your songs, it's one thing if I do it, because my music isn't that well known, but for people who have music that has been heard by millions and millions of people, especially over the course of like 45 or 46 years, however long it had been when they recorded this album, if you're going to re-record those songs, you got to do something special with them. You've got to find some other nuance, bring something else out. This part right here, I would have never expected this. And this is, obviously Russell's influence on the band, because again, we did not hear anything like this in the last version. He's really spicing it up. And I like this. It definitely adds a real offbeat feel to it. And it's interesting because I was just recording drums today or yesterday on a song, and I used actually a similar pattern to this. And it's just that like offbeat ride cymbal that just changes the feel of the song. The tempo is the same. The motion of the song is the same, but now it's shifted a little bit.
Now every time I try to set her free, I'm glad to say she comes right back to me.
Another really big change that's adding a whole different feel to the song is what Phil's playing. When we listen to the organ, it used to be that same pattern that Mick is playing, but he's playing just like straight chords. He's throwing in a little bit of, running the hand down the keyboard, and it sounds great. It's a completely different song while still being close enough to the original to recognize it, to have that respect of the construct of the song. But these different dimensions between the drums and the keyboard, I really like the feel of this.
If I knew she didn't want to stay, I wouldn't try to keep that lovely bird
It's interesting the power that Bernie's putting into this one. Not that he sang the last one poorly, because he was 100% there, but this one, it's like he's really found another gear for this one. And this is how a band member affects the band. It's not just how good they are at their instrument. It's their attitude. It's their presence. It's what they make you feel when you walk into the rehearsal room. It's all of those things come together. And then it's the performance, the way that they play. So Russell's playing this a lot heavier, a lot harder than Lee did on the last version or the original version was. And, the way that you perform is a lot based on the people that you're working with in the recording. So Bernie probably just naturally found this. As the song is faster, it kind of pushes harder. it just kind of demands a really strong vocal. And he certainly rose to that challenge without hesitation. He sounds fantastic here. Well, there you have it, folks. Bird of Prey, the first song off of Celebration. This is going to be interesting. I'm far more excited than I was half an hour ago to cover these songs again. But this already, right off the bat, if the rest of the album continues along this way, and I have no doubt that it will, this is going to be a pretty exciting season, even though, I just covered most of these songs last season. A lot of fire, a lot of energy, a new vision for the music, which I like. Everybody is just 1,000% on this song, and I love it. Again, I hate the fact that I can't speak for Trevor, but I literally heard no bass in this version. I'm sure he was there. I can't imagine any reason he wouldn't have been. So other than that, a couple of mix issues, the balance of keyboard and guitar, as well as the missing bass, and just in that one section, the bass drums not really punching through the way they could have. The mix was very, very good. And man, you can't deny the energy, the passion, or the talent of these musicians, because they are absolutely fantastic. We'll see what happens when we hit the next episode. But for today, guys, happy Friday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Take some time to do something good for yourself this weekend. And you know what? Do something good for somebody else. I tell you every week, I hope you're doing it, because it doesn't take much to make a big difference in somebody's life. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!